How's everyone doing? So far, great? Yeah, thank you. That's great. Awesome. So, compared to basically everyone else who's participating in these events for the next 2 days, I am a nobody. And I don't say that to be self-deprecating, believe it or not. You're going to spend the next 2 days learning from champion baristas, renowned roasters, prolific writers, business owners, scientists, and content creators with millions of followers. So many names and faces that you all recognize. Me, I'm like a Dancing with the Stars level coffee celebrity. I don't actually even work in the industry full time anymore, but some of you may have already learned this. If not, you probably will at some point, that once a coffee person, always a coffee person. The fact that I'm a nobody, or at least nobody that you know, is actually kind of the point of what I want to talk about today. And in some ways, it's by design. I have never wanted to be remembered for my face or for my name, but I want to be remembered by the way I make you feel and what I make you think about. So first, I want to give you a little bit of background, because I want you to know why you probably don't have any idea who I am. My name is Meister. I use they, she pronouns. I live here in the Twin Cities, and I've been a coffee professional since September 8, 2000. That was my first shift at my first coffee shop job in Boston. And on that day, I learned to make espresso by clicking once to make a single and twice to make a double, and letting the espresso run until it was clear. I also shattered a freshly filled jar of Earl Grey tea all over the floor directly in front of the 9 a.m. rush. I like to think I've come a long way since then. And since that first, actually disastrous day, I've done a little bit of just about everything that there is to do in coffee except grow it. Like many of you, I'm assuming, I didn't think that coffee was going to be my life's work. And in fact, I got my first coffee job because I was specifically pursuing a different career, which was in journalism. So just a few months before I learned how to make espresso, I got my first internship as a journalism student working for the Boston Globe, and I had to do celebrity interviews. I had never done an interview in my life, and I don't know if it shows, but I'm excruciatingly shy. My first interview that I had to do, I was so nervous that I scheduled it for a Saturday because I knew there would be no one in the newsroom. I came an hour early. I checked my recording technology 4 times, and then the minute we hung up the phone, I burst into tears. Do you want to know who I interviewed that day? The longtime announcer for the Westminster Kennel Club dog show. His name's David Fry. My editor at the time said, "You're this nervous talking to a guy who talks about poodles into a microphone for a living?" So I knew there was going to be a problem with my journalism career. And as it turned out, coffee was the perfect solution, because it forced me to get to know people. And it forced me to ask them questions like, "How are you?" and "What can I get for you?" Not only that, but it taught me to actually listen to what they said. Coffee taught me that you do have a relationship with someone that you see for 3 minutes every other day or every other month. And it taught me that every interaction is an opportunity. And that lesson changed everything for me. Sure, I can walk into an interview with a list of questions and go from one to the other down the line. But what would I actually learn about the person in front of me? What happens when you listen to and respond to them and let them lead you into a conversation? What happens when you enter an interaction with curiosity and you put your guard down? What if you stop worrying about who's in control on which side of the counter? And what if the reality is none of us are in control? We all need each other. Soon, once I stopped being afraid of and interrogating my customers, they became regulars, and regulars became my friends. We started to exchange stories and book recommendations and music recommendations. One of them gave me his old skateboard. It was my first skateboard, and I am terrible at skateboarding. Another one I taught latte art lessons to. Some of them became my ride or dies. Some of them became ill-fated relationships, but we're still friends. At least one of them followed my lead over the course of at least a year, going from a large vanilla latte to a small plain latte to cafe au lait, which slaps, by the way, to a small single origin black coffee to stay. Combining these two parts of my life, journalism and coffee, turned into a career as like a coffee storyteller. I'm a collector of ideas. I've been given myriad opportunities to speak with and listen to some of the most interesting people in this industry, doing some of the most exciting work, many of whom are going to be presenting to you and teaching to you this weekend. I've spoken with 95-year-old coffee traders and fourth-generation coffee farmers, the founders of the Specialty Coffee Association, U.S. and world barista champions, and the inventor of the Frappuccino, shout out to George Howell, the inventor of the AeroPress, espresso machine technicians, direct-to-consumer roaster retailers, the president of the Guatemalan Coffee Growers Association, and even Juan Valdez. We were homies. I've written about brewing techniques, flavor science, decaffeination, fermentation, marketing ethics, the machinations of coffee price, gender equity in the coffee industry. I have even written a story about what a flat white really is, even though I don't actually think I know what a flat white really is. One time I tasted every coffee that Nespresso makes in the name of coffee storytelling. And I do not recommend doing that at one time. It is great to go in there and say, I'll take one of everything. I've also had and continue to have countless interactions with coffee drinkers, and that allows me to share what I've learned in my work, to be something that information flows through rather than stops with. I'm a link in the chain. I like to think of myself as a correlation. I can't do what I do without wondering and asking, listening and interpreting. And what's the point of me telling you all of this? The point is that through coffee and storytelling, I've learned to make connections that go beyond transaction. To listen and be listened to be taught and to teach. And that's why we're all here today. Every connection that there is for you to make in this experience is an opportunity. And those opportunities have amazing potential. There's real power here in this room and in this building, and that power is authentic. So now we get to the good part of the speech, the part about power. Specifically, I want to talk to you about the difference between artificial and authentic power. How are y'all doing? Still with me? All right, cool, tight. Thanks for a woo. So artificial power is the type of power that we're taught to respect. It's like elected officials, right, and celebrities, and it's people who get put on a pedestal. It's like the ones who make the rules and control the money. And we can think about it kind of like this, right? The power is at the top and then sort of trickles down the bottom. I call this artificial power because it isn't ingrained. It isn't inherent. You're not born with it. You take it. Maybe sometimes it's given to you, but it can vanish in an instant. And that makes it jealous. It makes it afraid, and it makes it greedy. Authentic power, on the other hand, does not have to work that hard. It's right there, and it's waiting for you. you can use it. It's in you, even if you don't feel it. You have felt it, however, anytime you've had an interaction with a friend who has said something that opened your mind and helped you solve a problem that you'd been stuck on for weeks. It's when your neighbor brings you flowers from their garden and says, "I was just thinking about you and thought you might like these." It's when a stranger helps someone take their heavy bag out of the overhead compartment. It's when your barista remembers the weekend plans that you told them about and asks you how they went. So authentic power is definitely when someone says something that opens your mind to a new possibility, and that possibility changes your life. At the very least, it changes your mind. So that's authentic power. And here's the great news. You've already got it without even trying. The key is learning how to use it. When we think about the people in the coffee industry who have power, it's less like a triangle and more like an hourglass. We think about the people in the middle as being the ones where they control most of the money. They do most of the big work, all the trading, the manipulation of the C market, all that stuff that makes the coffee industry run the way it's run. And at either end of this supply chain, we see actors who feel relatively powerless, right? On the producing end, it's farmers and growers and pickers. On the consuming side, it's folks like our customers in coffee shops, and it's the baristas. All of us are at the whim of the market. Someone else makes the decisions about what gets bought and sold, how much things cost, how much we earn. We can complain about them, and like many of us do. But the thing about the powerlessness that exists on either side of this chain is that once you look at it this way, you realize it's manufactured. There's a lot more of us than there are of them. And when we strip it bare like this, we realize they work for us, not the other way around. If we talk to each other and we work together, we control the coffee and we control who buys the coffee. That's the whole industry. That's the whole industry. The thing about this is that you may not have a checkbook, that's such a boomer thing to say. You may not have access to unlimited funds. Wow. These boomer slides, okay. You may not have access to unlimited funds that changes someone's life, right? You can't just give someone enough money to make their life or their job sustainable, because that's not the place in the supply chain many of us are in. But what you do have is the power to talk with other people. You have authentic power. When we're listening and when we're connecting, we have the opportunity to be human together on a deep level, with a curiosity and an openness that doesn't just affect you, but changes them as well. There's nothing more powerful than relationship. And relationship is exactly what's lacking when you're looking to preserve artificial power, right? In order to preserve that power, you isolate yourself and make yourself as important as you can possibly seem. The thing about authentic power is artificial power doesn't want you to know that you have it, but you do. Okay, this is the part of the speech where you're thinking, Meister, I'm pretty sure the title of this was like Language and Power and Coffee Places, and so far you've told us your life story and given like a mini sermon about socialism. Are you gonna like tie it together? And to be honest, I think so. We'll see. We're gonna try. So I've been reflecting on this work that I've done over the last 25 years of being nobody that you recognize. But I'll say that while you've never seen my face before or heard my name, we've probably met. Either on a page or on a screen, in a magazine or in a book, maybe on a coffee bag. So even before I started working in more traditional marketing, I knew that words had power, and I knew that the words that I wrote or said would be listened to, and that someone might form an opinion about them or take an action or buy a product that I recommended. But it wasn't until I started working for an importing company that I realized how much power I had. And I'm going to tell you a story about myself that does not make me look good. For about 4 years, I was responsible for writing just about every coffee profile for every coffee that Cafe Imports sells. That's what you're looking at here. They're called beanologies. I didn't name them beanologies. Bring it up with them on Monday. But basically, I was the editorial manager. I was responsible for every word that appeared on the website. And it was my job to give the roasters the information about the coffees that they might want to buy or that they had bought. So I would list things like the origin, the farm name, the producer's name, the varieties. Maybe I'd have access to a more specific description of the process or about an anecdote between the buyer and the coffee farmer. So I'd write it out and I'd publish it, and it would just be on the website for roasters to use and learn more about the coffee. About a year after I started doing this work, I visited Costa Rica for the first time on what would become an annual trip, an educational trip, where I'd bring roasters and baristas to basically see the seed to cup journey. And we'd go around and meet farmers and pick coffee and watch it get processed, and then we would roast it, and then we'd cup it together, and it was awesome. And I was in the cupping lab at a famous micro mill called Las Lajas. Anybody knows Las Lajas in this room? Yeah, let's go. The family that owns the mill, Oscar and Francisca Chacon, they collect bags of their roasted coffee and they have them on a shelf. My first time in the lab, and I was like, oh, let's see what's over there. I picked up a bag and I started reading the information on it, and I noticed that Francisca's name was spelled wrong. And then I kept reading the description and it sounded weirdly familiar. And then my whole body got hot and I realized it was my mistake. I had misspelled Francisca's name on the Cafe Imports website, and someone used it on their bag. Ooh. Ugh. Now, this roaster may or may not have ever met the Chacons. And I'm not saying this to shame the roaster. They used the information exactly the way that it was intended to be used. But in that moment, something crystallized for me, that the words that I write and say have power, even if I don't see it, when they're coming out of my mouth or when I'm putting them down on the page. Okay, so how did I screw this up so badly? I didn't consider my source. The information came to me second, maybe third hand, and it was scribbled quickly months after the coffee was purchased. The mistake got embedded in the traceability information that I used to make all of these profiles, and then I made it permanent by publishing it on the website. And like really permanent, like how many coffee bags still have Francisca's name spelled wrong? Like really permanent. So what ripple does this have on all of us, on our customers? I went back to the work after that trip and immediately corrected the typo, like immediately. And it was on like 30 coffees. If you know Las Lajas, you know that they produce a lot of coffee. It was a penance that I really had to do. And I thought for a long time about what it would mean to be a messenger of coffee rather than a storyteller. And I changed the way that I did things. I started collecting information directly from the producer as often as possible. And I used my journalism skills to interview them and try and present the information in their own words whenever I could. I trusted the information that came from the source, and I made it a priority to put that at the forefront. I was not perfect at this. If you've ever done this work, you'd know that traceability is one of the most complicated things in the whole industry, especially when you're talking about very small farms, very distant places, language barriers, all kinds of things that we use as excuses. But I definitely took it more seriously in that moment. And I want you to take your words seriously too, Because if there's anything that I learned about language from this moment of abject horror in the Chacon's cupping lab, it's that language has power, and the power follows the same rules that we talked about before. Some of it is artificial, and some of it is authentic. Sometimes you can identify artificial language really easily because it's usually trying to get you to buy something, and it doesn't hide it very well. Marketing, in a traditional sense, is really only concerned with this end result. And the end result of all artificial power is to preserve the power. So once you start looking for it, it can be a little bit more transparent. Authentic language, much like authentic connection, power in a relationship, invites you to be something. Be curious, be critical, be open-minded, be vulnerable. And like you've seen it on stickers and t-shirts, be the change, basically. In trying to recover from my mistakes and creating a more authentic relationship with the producers that we worked with, basically forcing the system to change. Not only was I feeling a lot better about the words that I published about the coffees, but I started to care about the coffee a lot more immediately. And I built a relationship with every person who grew coffee that Cafe Imports sold. Now, you might not be in the same position as I was, drunk with power, knowing that whatever words you write are going to end up on a coffee bag somewhere and mortify you in Costa Rica. But you do have the power to have your words sink into someone's mind and ferment there, and then become a belief that they have, become something that they share with a friend, and become an action that they take. Anytime someone asks you what beans that they should buy, or what a particular roast level is, or what a process is, or about gender equity in coffee, they trust you to plant that seed in them. They think that you know what you're talking about because you work in this industry, and we do to a certain extent. But I thought I knew how to spell Francisca Chacon's name. So you have to be sure to build follow-through and mindfulness in your practice. How are y'all doing? Okay, great. Thank you. Needed a little woo break. Thank you. There are really small ways to use the power of your words more mindfully. An example that I love to share is recognizing and utilizing the difference between quality and preference. There's a big difference between saying broccoli tastes bad, which is like an objective diss on broccoli, and I don't prefer broccoli, which acknowledges that my yuck might be someone else's yum. Swap in any number of things for broccoli here. In my own life, that has been naturals, and it's been cold brew. I've done those two dirty for a long time. I don't prefer either one, but you might, and change my mind. Another example that seems really small, but is actually huge, is saying, you know what? I'm not sure, rather than bullshitting your way through an answer, especially when the question is something big, like, what does fair trade really mean? There's a huge opportunity and a moment of power that's shared when you say to that person, you know what? Let's try and find out together. And then you evaluate the resources that are available, weigh them against each other, and learn, think, consider, ask each other questions. While we're talking about opinions, here's another one of mine. Respect the things you disagree with. Every disagreement offers you information about yourself and about your values, what you believe in and what you reject. If you dismiss things out of hand because you disagree with them, you're creating yourself a funnel. You're creating yourself in a vacuum. This is what artificial power wants you to do. Authentic power is in inviting the disagreement into the room and facing it and being uncomfortable with it. A little more advice. What's a keynote speech without advice? I don't actually know. I had to Google what a keynote speech was when they told me I was doing this. All right, some more advice from me. Measure twice and cut once. Fact check everything. Question everything. Hate read the articles. Hate watch the YouTube videos. Do the follow-up. None of us needs to have it all figured out, and we don't need to carve our knowledge into stone. We're seeking authenticity here, right? We're sharing authentic power. And authenticity doesn't need to have the answer, it needs to have the questions. It needs to be able to change its mind. I'm not personally drawn to people who present like they know they have it all figured out. I want to be awed by the unknown. I love being curious. I love being fascinated and confused. I'm often confused. I want to have conversations about this stuff, not be lectured about it. And I know it's ironic me saying that while I'm standing here lecturing you. This is not my natural habitat. The point is, I want you to be excited and so excited about this that you exude curiosity. Draw people in. Being excited is an invitation, and it opens the opportunities that you have with your customers and with your colleagues. It invites connection. That connection is more powerful than any one of our egos, anyone in this building. Coffee isn't a static thing that you can conquer. It's a moving target. And you'll get a lot more out of it if you move with it and invite other people to dance. Now, are you starting to get a sense of the power that you have? Just nod. Yep. I am powerful. Let's say it. Thank you. I appreciate that. It doesn't feel comfortable for me either. I shouldn't be the only one who's uncomfortable, Jesus. I want you to feel awake and alive and prepared to approach even everything that you learned this weekend with a critical, open, curious mind. If someone says something that you're not sure about, ask them a question. Just because we're teachers doesn't mean that we're impenetrable. Every single person here learned by asking questions, and that's the reason that they're all in the position of holding a microphone and sweating through their shirts. The good news is you're about to quickly notice that all of us are inviting you to connect. Come up, ask, be involved, whether it's building a network or making a friend, asking a question that you have about a complex issue, or helping you find your next step in the work that you passionately love. Every one of us is here because of you and because of the power that exists in the relationships we have with one another. When I stand up here, I have the most beautiful ego death I could ever imagine because I'm nobody, but I'm really nobody without you. None of us would be here without you, and we all need each other. We have our place in the business of coffee. We all have our role in making this magical and frustrating and beautiful and diverse and inspiring place a reality. And my role has been in inviting you in. And now I want you to turn to each other and make a friend. Have your mind change this weekend. Share an idea with someone that you admire. Make a mistake. Screw something up. Break something. Sorry, Mill City Roasters. Most of all, fall in love with coffee and fall in love with coffee people because we are the industry. Coffee's a great drink. Coffee's a great drink, but it doesn't make itself. It's the hands and it's the hearts and it's the minds that make it a reality. This is as close to ruby slippers as I could get. Never forget, you already have all the power you need. It's in you. Just go out there and use it. Have fun.